Hello, innovators. I'm Todd and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and construction innovation adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Bob Armbrister, President and CEO of Spark Business Works. Bob was recently selected as a 40 under 40 by the Grand Rapids Business Journal. Spark is also recognized nationally for helping firms build and adopt technology solutions that result in practical innovation. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I always like to start with how you got into the construction industry orbit.
Yeah, I know. And I've listened to some of, a lot of your episodes and most people, their journey is like, I was on a job site for all these years out of high school, or my dad brought me on as a kid. And I'm thinking,
a lot of
man,
family connections.
Yeah. I'm like, oh gosh, the first time I was on a job site was when a client brought me on there and I had to go find shoes to wear because I didn't have any steel toe boots. So my journey in construction started later in my career. It was a lot of software and technology. And then it wasn't until one of my clients that I was consulting with, helping them, they said, hey, you got to look at some of this stuff. And, got me on a job site. And then it was just like, wow, this stuff is impacting people on the daily, on their daily lives at work, helping them be safer. I mean, just that first job site tour really made me realize the impact and the opportunity that's out there with technology in this industry. And so, yeah, mine was when a client finally brought me on there and said, here, let's show you how this stuff's actually being used in the field. And that was a big step there for me in the construction industry.
Yeah, nice. I like it. I'm similar. I don't have a background in construction before I came to Applied Software 7.5 years ago. It was a learning experience.
I remember because that first time I was on that site, the person that gave me the tour, they looked at me and they said, you see what that guy's doing over there? And they were all like, something was going on. And I'm like, I don't know, it looks fine to me, looks good. And I guess he was, not tied off, and he was, 3 stories in the end. They're like, it was very interesting to see the stuff that they can see, and it's amazing. So
yeah, nice. I hear we also have something else in common too. I was reading that you have 4 young kids at home.
I do.
My 4th is on the way, but we're
all right.
We'll have 4 too. How is it going to 4?
You're just as crazy as we were. After the second one, the 4th, it kind of just raises himself. So we have 4 boys.
Oh, wow.
I think we stopped using baby gates after the second. And, once the third, ran into everything, the 4th, basically the 4th just kind of follows the other 3. So we don't really have to do much from there's no helicoptering like you were on maybe the first couple.
Yeah.
So yeah, you should be just fine. But yeah, nice. 4 is wild, but at least now you're back to even numbers. And, when you're riding roller coasters, everyone will have someone to sit next to. So
there you go. Yeah. My second is a girl, and then I have boys in 1 and 3. That my third born, he's a mess. He's hysterical, but he's a mess. He thinks he's just as big as the oldest.
Yeah. The third, our third is, it's, there'll be bruises that show up and we're like, that looks awful. When did that happen? And they're just like, I don't know. It's just like, what is going on?
Yeah, that's fun. Just along for the ride.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, let's dive into our topic, and really want to start with on the technology adoption piece. So how do you ensure a good, healthy adoption when you're introducing a new tool or a new process?
Yeah, I mean, in construction, I mean, we speak about it a lot. I mean, it is the most challenging environment. Well, maybe space is worse, but I mean, you have in the winter, it's cold, it's rainy. You have environments that are changing, dusty, dirty, and then you have a user group that maybe isn't always the most technology savvy, but are extremely good at what they do, and can see technology as maybe a hindrance in certain cases. And so you have very difficult environment. You can have very difficult users in certain cases. And here we are in a business where we're trying to help these types of companies adopt technology. And so, yeah, so we've found lots of different things in that help. The number one thing is if you look at maybe the stuff that's happening in Silicon Valley years ago, user-centered design and just things of that nature that now to most people in technology may be 5 to 10 years old. Those are kind of the practical things that need adopted in construction, being one of the laggard industries. So what we see is the fundamental principle around user-centered design, which is understanding how a user is going to use technology and what they need to do in their daily life, and stakeholder alignment. So not sitting in a room in the back office and drafting up some new solution and then just throwing it on the field teams, but actually talking to the field teams. Why aren't you using the current tool? Hey, what does work? What does your day look like? That type of empathetic technology approach of understanding the user is what we see as probably the number one way to reduce the majority of the risk in a technology adoption in construction.
Interesting. So then maybe expand on this. So why and how should the construction leaders think more like a software company, like what you were just talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's it right now. I mean, when you look at the traditional, the traditional software in construction has been built to try to mold every single firm into doing the exact same thing, almost like QuickBooks or something that they're like, oh, we're going to build this software once, and then every mechanical contractor is going to be able to use this because it has all the core stuff there. What we've seen is, the uniqueness of these firms in their marketplaces are how they do the work. And so a lot of that software can't just be deployed to any single MEP out there. And so what we've seen is, clients really taking a step back, looking at their business, looking at their users. What are they trying to accomplish? How they perform their work, and then trying to configure their business in doing so and using what tools are out there. We've seen mechanical contractors in the same region bidding on the same jobs, doing the same type of work, do completely different things when it comes to technology. Because it's how that company operates. And that's, I think, what's really cool about construction.
Yeah, I think technology is so integrated in with the culture, but how you use and leverage technology tells you so much about a company's culture and the mindset that they have. What kind of mindset and probably even structure needs to be changed then to really be successful at embracing this, think like a software company for construction firms?
Yeah, I think it's a feedback loop. We had the advantage, Spark was spun out of a large national CM firm. And so we had the ability early on, CSM Group is the firm, we had the ability to test things with them first, right? Which was great. And it's really about that feedback loop and creating an environment where individuals feel open to share. And I mean, that does not exist everywhere, right? When you actually sit down with individuals that are going to use a tool or be involved in how the company is going to change over time, those conversations don't happen as often as you think they would happen. Right. There's a big disconnect a lot of times. Construction is typically spread out across regions or states or counties. But making sure that feedback loop, whether it's in person or what it is, and then making sure people, even the people that might not want to speak up because they're afraid of sounding stupid, that's a real thing. So creating a culture and environment that embraces that feedback, I think, is huge, and it's not easy to do in construction.
So kind of going down that line, what are ways to alleviate or at least minimize the risk of adoption to make people more comfortable and maybe less scared to act on something?
Yeah, we found getting individuals involved early on in the process. So really before you've selected maybe a solution, actually talking to people so they're engaged in the actual business side of it, right?
So you actually know the pain point before?
I know, right? I mean, some of this stuff is kind of funny to talk about, but
But it's amazing how it doesn't happen, even though it seems like,
yeah, like
why would you not?
let's use like a time entry example. Hey, a team's going to change how they do time entry. You could go and pick out 2 or 3 solutions from using your HR team and your IT team, and then present it to a group of your field employees and say, what do you think of these? Or maybe you get them involved at the front end when you say, hey, we're defining the challenges in the field with time entry. Will you help us define these challenges? And they might say, well, yeah, well, hey, this thing isn't working. This thing, all of a sudden they're part of the solution. And all you did was get them engaged a little early on in the process, right? I mean, it's just going back to, we use, empathy is a huge deal, right? Having empathy for that end user, understanding that what they're going to be doing and what their day looks like. And, you'd be surprised at how less innovative a company needs to be to actually be innovative and get that stuff done. Because usually when you get those individuals involved early on, they're going to help you really solve that problem better than you could.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so easy to form an assumption about somebody else's problem, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, this is clearly what it is. But then when you talk to them and they're like, oh, if we could only fix, ABC, and you're like, that's the easiest thing in the world. We could fix that tomorrow, of course. You were trying to solve something so much more complex than what actually needed to be solved, and they're super excited having that simple thing solved. So don't overcomplicate it. Don't assume.
Oh man, we've seen the introduction of an automated email or an automated text message to remind somebody to do something. So a very inexpensive solution has solved business problems that they were going to adopt, 6-figure solutions to try to solve by just talking to the user and just figuring it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I saw you wrote a blog article recently about the 80-20 rule and kind of breaking that down. How can you streamline the waste and inefficiency to hopefully fix that kind of 20% of the issues that are taking up 80% of your time?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that a lot about, what are the what are those things on your list that if you do are going to be the domino effect, right? And the same thing happens in technology for our clients. We see a lot. It goes back to also knowing what that 5-year plan is. I mean, the business side of things, I think is kind of that next piece, right? You got the user-centered focus on solutions, but then the next piece is really the business side of it. And what we've seen too often is people don't look out far enough. And so they're just really short term. And then they end up having to just adjust, tweak, change. And then all of a sudden you just get bloat, or you get, a lot of technical debt. And so understanding that long-term vision on what's happening and the needs of the organization today, and then also several years from then, will help them really kind of maybe hone down the feature set. And then less is more, right? So the 80-20 thing is really most software that we see and solutions people are pretty overwhelmed with. And so kind of dialing all that back and maybe not trying to adopt every single module in a solution from day one. Like start small, start with one module in a small team. Don't roll something out to the whole company at some, cutover point where you're burning all the boats behind you and you're stuck and you're, like there's no out. I mean, that's like the highest risk thing you could do, right? And most of the failures seem to happen in those cases. And I'm sure there's people listening, and I'm speaking to the choir, right? But it's very tempting to just try to, hey, we're going to do this thing. We're going to do it one time, and let's try to make this thing huge. That increases cost. It increases timeline, increases risk. But say, hey, we want one team to try this thing out, and we're going to dial down the modules way down. So it's just one, I mean, that's the process that we've seen works, is starting small and then making changes as you're getting adoption. Because you never get it right the first time, right? So
yeah. So who should have a seat at the table then in this implementation process to be able to have a good kind of cross section of the company, so you're getting that input, but not so big that you're death by a thousand voices.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's several different stakeholders. I give them different personas. You know, that person, the one, my favorite one is that person that walks by like a computer screen and the thing kind of flickers, right? That person like nothing ever works for, because that is the person that I want involved the whole time, right? You know, the person, I remember doing my first time entry tool in construction. I thought it was like perfect. You know, I talked to the users, I showed them some screens. We were all, you know, I did my best at the time with the user-centered approach. And then the moment I gave it to someone in the field, the guy looked at it and his finger is like 3 times the size of my finger, right? I got these little computer hands, right? I've been developing software. This guy looks at this phone screen. He's like, how am I going to hit that button? You know, look at my hand. And so it's like, oh my gosh, you know, like that person that has all those challenges, that field, typically, you know, it's an older field person, is kind of what always seems to have technology problems. Get them involved from day one. They're going to find every single reason why this thing is not going to work, right? And they're going to find it faster than anyone else. So get that person involved. And a lot of times you want to avoid those people in technology projects. Well, we don't want to get Jim involved, because no, you want that person involved from day one.
Yeah.
Because when you get them as a champion and you roll this thing out, they're going to be the one supporting it, because everyone's going to look to them. And if Jim's like, you know, let's just use Jim as if Jim was the one helping craft the solution, he's not going to badmouth it when it gets deployed. So that's one person that you got to have involved. You know, the accounting sage, I call him like a sage, but that person that has been here for 30 years or been with the firm for so long, they've seen everything come and go. The person that's going to, hey, are you going to make sure it does this and this? So that historian, maybe we call them, getting that historian involved that, you know, may not want to be involved in any technology project, but has seen a lot. Getting that person involved is key. You know, the ROI business person, you know, the person that could kill the deal at any moment, getting that person involved. You know, there's several different personas that we kind of talk about a lot. Those are 3 of the main ones. You know, just picking out the leaders, people that are going to look to them for you know, how do they respond to this kind of stuff. You know, you got the younger tech enthusiast person that wants to digitize everything, you know, getting them, and then getting the people that are resistant. So I think you get a good group, a good cross section there. Get them involved in the solution stage up front, and your odds of success are going to go way up.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree. So you were kind of talking about just that, but how do you share those kind of practical stories of technology success to encourage those who think it might not be able to be done in construction?
Yeah, how do you share those stories?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, it's what we've seen work a lot. You know, we work in a lot of regional markets where we're serving competitors. And so being able to show other people's work that we've done or how other firms are doing things is a little more difficult in construction, but we do have some firms that have given us permission. And, you know, there's been times where I've been at a tech conference. I remember one in Grand Rapids, Michigan, ABC chapter held a tech conference, and the group of employees came up to me. They were like in the front row, like they were so engaged. I was like, wow, like this never happens, right? They were like almost answering my, you know, finishing my sentences. And they came up to me afterwards and they said, we've seen you speak about this twice, so 2 years in a row. And this time we brought our CFO so they could actually see it. And they're now a customer of ours, but they had no idea about some of the technology solutions in construction, like some of the possibilities, like they just had no idea, right? There's not a huge, you know, it's just an interesting industry. And so being able to share this stuff through podcasts like this, you know, conferences, there's just not enough of them, but, you know, that's one thing that I'm passionate about, is spreading the word. Because once some of these firms see it, they're just like, wow, right? This is amazing. And it's usually through clients sharing it. We've done webinars, we've done presentations with clients, and when they share their story, then that's when other people see it and they go, oh, wow, okay, I'm not, you know, I'm not alone in this, because there's a lot of pressure in that industry to change, but I don't think a lot of people know about all the different options. And so they're kind of just in this weird zone. And so that's how it's the word spreading right now. But it does, like I said, they saw me for years speaking about it before they made a change. But just getting people, like getting shows like this, getting people plugged in, I think is key.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, I'm all for people sharing their stories and making it kind of on that organic level. Even it's so easy to, at least for me, to kind of get in this little bubble of I talk tech adoption and innovation all the time, so it's like it's everywhere, but it's not. There's still so many people that are overwhelmed by the options, don't know all the options, and are need to be educated on that. And so I think the more people out there spreading that word, the better.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, it is. It is not like, I was in startups and Silicon Valley type stuff, 10 years ago, right? And there's thousands and thousands of books and articles and blogs and podcasts. And I mean, there's just, you compare that type of industry and that kind of thing to the construction technology. And there is, I mean, it's going to be great to watch, because it's going to eventually get built up, and it's pretty cool. I think the industry has their perception of not wanting to change is not accurate. And so them just getting exposed to more of the solutions is pretty cool.
I agree. There's some of the best creative problem solvers, bar none, of any industry here in construction. And I think that they don't claim that mantle as much as what they should, and recognize it themselves, even though it's true. I mean, that's what they do every single day on a job site.
Yeah, like I was talking to one of our clients the other day, and they're building like a giant building, and I'm just like totally amazed. Like, and they're like, yeah, did you know like the footings could only go halfway down as far as they could? I'm like, wow, like that's got to be a big deal. Like, how do you solve that? Oh, wow, well, here, they got this whole thing where it's like, if I would have had that problem running that building, I'm like, oh, can't build it. Sorry, couldn't do that deep enough. Sorry. And but it's like, no, they found a way. I mean, so yeah, you're right. The way they solve problems, and that's what I try to remind some of our younger technology team members that are typically, they've been maybe the smartest people in the room most of their life. Yeah. Getting them to empathize with the end user and say, look, these people might not be super tech savvy, but they solve just as challenging problems as you do. You got to really understand what they're trying to do. And that's pretty cool to see when you can admire someone else's work and in a different industry.
Absolutely. Love that. What's something that you think is going to really help shape and then define the construction industry this year?
I think the lack of labor is going to force some adoption. It's going to really probably push things. I mean, I was just on a call earlier today where, some of these regional hubs like Austin, Raleigh, Durham, Nashville, I mean, they're talking about these huge plants, right? And you hear about the size and the scope, like what Tesla's doing and Samsung's doing. It's like they're building all these chip plants. Like, who's going to build all that? I mean, I know they want to spend 40 billion on that building, but everyone's already busy. Like who's going to build it? Right. So, it's going to be very interesting to see the innovations. And I think because of that constraint, it's going to force companies to try new things. Right. So it's going to be a really cool, innovative next few years. And I think the labor shortage and then the amount of onshoring, that's going to create an environment for a ton of innovation. I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an innovation laboratory right now in construction. So it's a super exciting time to be in the industry.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there has been times, but I mean, this kind of industry with this type of technology and these kind of funds, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of like a once in a lifetime moment.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. So if innovation is going to be kind of one of the main themes in impacting the year. What's not going to change with technology over the next couple of years? And then what are younger professionals, tech professionals missing?
Man, that's a good one. I think the business side of technology is not going to change. When I speak to a lot of, I'll talk to a lot of people's kids, or maybe they're graduating high school. Hey, what should we do? Should I be a programmer? Should I go into business? What should I do? I always tell them, like, if they're really excited about technology, understand the business side of it, right? Because the one thing that's really cool about the construction industry that I like is that, they don't just waste money on anything, right? Like their whole industry is about reducing waste, right?
Yeah.
So, so a lot of the projects we talk about, like, there is a ROI built into that, right? Like, you're not going to invest, most of these firms, obviously there's firms that have R&D budgets and they're trying different things, but the privately held, middle market firms are not just blowing money on stuff, right? There's a business side of it. And so understanding that, hey, we're not trying to do something fancy. This has to work, and here's how we're going to track whether it works, is key. And I think that's one thing that won't change, right? Is the business side of technology in construction, at least. They are not going to just waste money without an ROI or a path to one. So I think that's one thing that we know that I feel is not going to change, which is good. I love that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good piece, and something to set a firm kind of solid foundation too when you're thinking through tech.
Yeah, I mean, you can see a lot of construction technology startups that I've spoken to or been on the other side of a sales call with. You can tell the ones that are backed by maybe VC funds that don't really know the industry, because they're outrageously priced with no clear ROI, and so it's kind of, I mean, you almost feel bad for them, because I'm like, good luck. You're never going to find a middle market construction firm that's going to spend $100,000 a year on that, because you can't communicate how that's going to save them or help them make more than 100. And so that's, I mean, it's pretty apparent. But there's the ones that are pricing it right, and they're focusing on the business side and the ROI. They're having a lot of success.
Yeah, nice. Well, I want to ask and hear the story on behind you. You have the Make It Matter sign, real big. What's the story on that?
Yeah, so I'm actually in, so CSM Group. That's the construction firm that we were a part of, and I'm at their headquarters in Kalamazoo. We just had a big meeting, and so each of their breakout rooms, has some stuff on the wall. Whether it's about safety or leadership. We have one that says always be available, client-centered, make it matter. One of the, core values we try to look for is people that just love what you do, right? And have fun. And that comes across to clients. And so, just having stuff on the wall to remind you what you're doing here. I mean, especially in today's marketplace, talent can go anywhere, and everyone has a choice. And so, trying to make a fun environment and know that you're making a difference every day, I think is key. So we have some nice stuff on the wall to remind people of that.
Yeah, I love that stuff to kind of center everybody back into a meaning and a purpose. I think that's great.
Definitely.
Well, how do people find out more information and connect with you?
Yeah, so sparkbusinessworks.com is our website. You can find me on LinkedIn, and we publish a lot. We speak a lot. We look up to podcasts like this, and we're excited to be on them and continuing to spread the word about the innovation and what's possible in construction technology to the ones that I think need it the most. So
nice. Well, I love that. Well, Bob, last question for you. What does innovation mean to you?
Yeah, innovation. Wow, what does it mean to me? I think it's that ever, that if you're not growing, you're shrinking. If you're not evolving, you're going to be crushed over time. So I think innovation, I like to focus on practical innovation. You know, the back of the napkin ROI innovation. I think it's just steady progress. And I think team members look for that. You know, no one wants to be at a firm that doesn't change. We've all probably worked at one of those and everyone complains about that. So I think innovation is just constantly looking forward into the future and making decisions on the tools and people that help you get there.
Yeah, I like it. That's awesome. There's a fine line there too, because people complain about companies that don't change, but then if you change too drastically, you're going to get some people bristling there too. So
Yeah,
I think it's important to kind of find that line, and maybe push the envelope a little bit, but find that line where
that is
people
that is a steady balance, because I've been way too far over that line saying, why isn't anyone else coming over with me? Come on, guys. Don't you want to go over here? Oh no. Okay. I maybe push something a little too far. So yeah, it's you know, getting everyone on board is key. So appreciate what you do in the marketplace. Appreciate the podcast, the invite as well. And looking forward to seeing what happens in this industry and excited to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Bob, for joining the show and taking the time.
Thanks, Todd. Take care.